guys, the Benidorm Enthusiast here, and today I'm going to be chatting to you about something which causes a lot of debate here in Benidorm and has recently been in the papers, causing a stir and a lot of confusion over the regulations surrounding their use, which I will go over with you shortly. I am, of course, talking about mobility scooters. And these vehicles are very closely associated with Benidorm, mainly due to Madge from the TV series starting a trend almost 2 decades ago now. And they can be very, very useful for people who need them. But there is also a lot of misuse of these vehicles around Benidorm, and every so often we'll be warned of a clampdown on them. Now, according to the UK papers, this last week there are new rules only recently put in place to regulate their usage. One particular article I read was from the Daily Record with the headline, "Benidorm tourists warned they could face £425 fine in new crackdown." Notice the date on this article, 2nd of June 2025. And further down the article it goes on to say, Brits heading to Benidorm are being warned they could be slapped with a hefty £425 fine amid a crackdown on mobility scooters. Mobility Solutions Direct experts have issued a warning to tourists about the potential fines as local authorities tighten up regulations on scooter usage. Now, when I saw this, I started doing my own research, going through the Spanish news articles, Benidorm town hall pages, local police pages, and so on, things like that, to see what I could find out for myself. And I couldn't find anything from the Spanish side about new rules for this type of scooter, which normally tells me one thing: it's the papers writing crap again. Then, thanks to a friend of mine, the lovely Michelle over at Benidorm Forever, we got confirmation from the Benidorm Town Hall that there have actually been no new regulations or laws brought in recently. The same regulations are in place, and I'll go over them with you in just a second. But just to prove how much tosh the UK tabloids write these days, here's another article. This one is from the Mirror, and this one is dated the 28th of June 2024, last year, and its headline is almost exactly the same. New crackdown in Benidorm sees £425 fines for unexpected rule breakers. And the same guy from the same mobility company supposedly issued the warning last year as well. Lee Cartwright, mobility scooter specialist at Mobility Solutions Direct, has explained what rules mobility scooters should follow to avoid getting hit with a £425 fine in the resort popular with UK tourists and expats. And here's another one from The Sun, this one dated 25th of July 2022. Again, almost exactly the same headline. Benidorm cracks down on mobility scooters. Tourists face £425 fines for bad driving. So that just goes to show you that these sorts of news outlets, to be honest, I'm not even really sure how they can even call themselves news outlets anymore, but it just goes to show you they will regurgitate the same BS stories year after year without even doing any fact checking, without doing any research, or without any intention of getting the real news and the real facts out there. First of all, you must be over 55 years old or have a certified walking disability to rent a mobility scooter. You also require public liability insurance covering at least €60,000 to cover any potential damages. Now, if you're hiring a scooter from a reputable company, this should always be included in the rental contract, but always check for yourself. You must follow traffic signs and rules such as stop signs, traffic lights and one-way streets. One-seat scooters are designed for one person and two-seaters are for 2 people, not entire families or stag party groups. Speed limits on pavement, it's a maximum speed of 4 kilometres an hour. And on bike lanes and roads, a maximum speed of 20 kilometres an hour or less if the traffic speed limit is under 20 kilometres an hour, as it is now in a lot of areas of Benidorm. Drink driving. Authorities can stop you and breathalyse you and issue you a hefty fine if you're over the limit. The scooter can also be seized, and if that's the case, it's also likely you'll have a nice bill to pay from the rental company to cover the costs of getting it back. Also worth noting here that if you are over the limit, your insurance is invalid. Therefore, if you do have an accident, you will be the one that has to pay for any damages. So those are the current rules, nothing new. And for most people, I would say that it's just common sense really. But as I mentioned before, we do see a lot of abuse of these regulations here in Benidorm. And that causes a lot of debate amongst the local residents and visitors alike. So should the police be more actively looking to clamp down on those abusing the use of mobility scooters? Should they be looking at more closely at the companies that are obviously not adhering to the rental regulations? Or do you think the authorities should be more lenient? Do you think it's acceptable to use them as transport for a bar crawl or a bit of fun? Have you ever used them yourself, and what was your experience like? I'm intrigued to hear all your thoughts about this subject in the comments section below. Personally, I think they can be an absolute godsend for people with mobility issues. I've used one myself over 10 years ago now, and I broke my ankle in 3 places. I had it operated on, but it was a long recovery, almost 3 months before I could even attempt to put any weight on my ankle. Now those 3 months I would have been pretty much housebound had I not had access to a mobility scooter. I could manage about 100 metres on crutches, but even that was really a struggle during the intense heat over summer. I would have probably lost my mind being stuck indoors for 3 months. And the mobility scooter allowed me to get out and about and not to have to rely on other people too much for basic day-to-day things like nipping to the shop. However, I have also seen the misuse of mobility scooters on a massive scale over the years. People coming out of a bar where they've been dancing, they've been bouncing about, jumping around off their faces, falling onto a mobility scooter and then using it to get them to the next bar. I've seen damage to cars in the street, I've seen whole families piled up, 5 or 6 of them on a scooter, rather than paying for taxis from one end of town to another. I've had my ankles clipped by them, and that is painful. And I've also seen some more serious accidents where people have been completely knocked over and injured, or have had to jump out of the way into oncoming traffic on the road, creating an even bigger traffic accident risk. So the problem with mobility scooters is that they can be fun to play around on. And I'm guilty of this myself, using them as a toy, and that's not their intended use. I grabbed onto the back of one and I got pulled along on my skates. Probably not the brightest moment of mine in hindsight, but that's the thing, in the heat of the moment, we can all do daft things, and when mobility scooters are involved, that can be dangerous. So how do you make these things not fun and not appealing to people to mess about on? I don't know. I do completely understand the debate around mobility scooters, and I also think the rules in place are fair enough. But what's the point in having regulations if they're not enforced? Year after year, we hear rumours of the authorities taking the misuse of mobility scooters more seriously. But I can't say I've ever really noticed a difference. Maybe this year we will see that happen, or maybe not. If you have hired a mobility scooter previously, legitimately, then don't worry, you should have no problems hiring one again. But always check with your hotel first if they have an agreement with a specific company in place. Some hotels will only work with one company, and if you rent from anybody else, they won't let you charge the scooter on their premises. Most of the time, if you get in touch with your hotel beforehand, they will organise the scooter rental for you with their preferred company, and it'll be waiting for you when you arrive. Thanks for watching this video, guys. I hope it's been informative for you. Give us a thumbs up if you found it useful, and make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future videos. Also, check us out on Facebook, Instagram and TikTok at the Benidorm Enthusiast. Stay positive and stay safe.